Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Basic Education Board.
Hello, students. Welcome to the TV learning programs where you're going to be watching and learning. As usual, I'm Teacher Herbert, who is going to be taking you through the biology of Senior 2, which is concerning about active transport. It's Unit 4, which is concerning about active transport. Active transport. As you know, last time we'll be discussing about passive transport. I think everybody, we can make a review what are passive processes, where some molecules, they move freely without use of energy. Examples of passive transport, we talked about diffusion, we talked about osmosis, and we talked about facilitated diffusion. We can make a small review about passive transport. In passive transport, we said diffusion, the net movement of molecules from a higher concentration to a lower concentration down the concentration gradient. And we talked about, in that process, the molecules are moving randomly. They are freely moving. They don't need anything to move them, all right? So, but we talked about osmosis, and we said osmosis is the net movement of molecules and particles, or molecules of water from a high water potential to a low water potential across a partially permeable membrane. So now today we're going to talk about active transport. Think about it, and you tell me, what is active transport? What do you understand by active transport? Active transport, most of the time when we talk about active transport, it is against concentration gradient, not down the concentration gradient. We can say active transport is the movement of ions or molecules from a low concentration to a higher concentration against the concentration gradient or across the plasma membrane with the utilization of energy. I can say, that is to say it is uphill transport. This is the definition, active transport. You write the definition. Definition of active transport. Active transport is the movement of ions or molecules from a region of low concentration to higher concentration against the concentration gradient, against the concentration gradient with the utilization of cellular energy. So students, that is the definition. And most of the energy we are using, the energy that is going to be used to transport those molecules from higher concentration to a lower concentration must be in form of ATP. We use ATP. If I say ATP in full, that is the cellular energy that is going to be used in transport of molecules protein carrier molecules. Glucose and other molecules can just be transported by use of cellular energy, which is in form of ATP, and ATP in 4 is adenosine triphosphate. If I say adenosine triphosphate, if you get a diphosphate plus another phosphate group, you normally get a triphosphate, ATP, which is ATP. And most of this energy is normally stored, who can remind me, at the part of an organelle where ATP is found, cellular energy. Most of ATP is normally stored in mitochondria. And mitochondria, that is mitochondria, we call it to be a storehouse for cellular energy in form of ATP. So some of molecules move from lower concentration to higher concentration by being helped by ATP, which is hydrolysis of ATP. That one, the molecules can move from lower concentration to higher concentration by the help of cellular energy, and that cellular energy must be in form of ATP. Let me try to give you a small drawing. Let me have a diagram here. I can have a diagram which can just be drawn in that way. This is a beaker. We have a partially permeable membrane. All right. We have some molecules here on that side. On the right-hand side, we have less number of molecules, but here we have more solutes. More solutes. Let me see, they can just be sodium ions. Or they can just be sodium ions. Here, I have less number of sodium ion on that side. This is side A, and this is side B. As you can consider in those, this one is called to be a partially permeable membrane. A partially permeable membrane. That partially permeable membrane can allow some molecules to pass through. So the molecules can move from that side, can move from here to that side. As you are seeing, they are moving from here to that side, from here to that side, but they are using ATP, the energy, which is going to be used is ATP, which is going to be hydrolyzed by a phosphate group and form what you call ADP. So it means that the molecules can move the molecules can move from here, let's say, let me try to draw it clearly so that everybody can see it clearly. Let's have, this is a partially permeable membrane, I have these molecules on that side, I have some molecules, some solutes on that side, we have some solutes on that side, we have some solutes on that side, but on that side I have more solutes compared to that side of B. There are more solutes, 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 there are more solutes. So you can see the molecules can move from here. They will just be moving from that side to that side. They are moving from that side. What causes these molecules to move from a lower, this is a lower concentration, a lower concentrated region, and this region is highly concentrated region. So you can see now, what will happen, this is lower concentrated region, this is higher concentrated region. But molecules can move from here to here. It means they will just be using ATP, which is ATP will be hydrolyzed by a phosphate group and form ATP. So form what we call ADP. So these molecules will just move from a lower concentration to higher concentration by the help of energy, which is in form of ATP. Let's try to show you another diagram that can try to show you about active transport. We can have that diagram. The diagram also, check on that diagram. We have on that side, there is, I can try to use, there is a higher concentration of molecules inside the cell. There are more higher concentration of molecules inside the cell compared to the outside of the cell. Here, more molecules are added to the higher concentration. They move from here, they go inside here. From outside, this is inside, and this is outside. This is outside. So inside, there are more molecules compared to the outside. So this molecule has to move from outside to inside by the help of what you call hydrolysis of ATP, by the help of ATP molecule. This is ATP, will be hydrolyzed to ADP, and one molecule of phosphate will be used to transport these molecules, carrier proteins. So these carrier protein molecules move molecules up their concentration gradient. If I say up their concentration gradient, means it is uphill transport. If I say uphill transport, if I say uphill transport, that means try to draw this uphill transport from lower concentration to higher concentration. If I'm drawing a graph from there, this is my graph. All right, this is the graph. This is a lower region. This is a high region. So if I'm moving from here, molecules move from higher concentration to lower concentration, that means this is diffusion. But when molecules are moving from lower concentration, climbing from lower concentration to higher concentration, that one is active transport. Student, are you getting what I'm saying? We have this, the diagram which is showing how to call carrier proteins moving inside the cell. Here we have less number, you count, this is 1, 2, but inside you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So meaning that inside there are more molecules compared to the outside. But what makes these molecules these insoluble molecules to be carried from outside to inside, that one is helped by ATP. So it means that most of active transport uses energy, or what you call, they use energy to transport molecules, carrier proteins. And take an example, carrier proteins, you can talk about glucose, are transported by the help of ATP. I also try to draw a graph from here. This graph shows this is from a higher region, this one is a lower region. We can just be using, take an example, when someone is riding a bicycle. One day when he's riding a bicycle, moving up the mountain, he uses more energy, that is active transport, he uses more energy. But when a person is dropping down on a mountain, he uses less energy. So when I'm climbing from here, from lower region to higher region, that is active transport. But when I'm moving from higher region to a lower region, that is diffusion, and that is a passive process. When I'm sloping from the mountain and going down on the valley, I don't use energy. So that one does not need energy. That is a passive process. Molecules can move freely without use of energy. But moving from down to higher, from lower region to higher region, that one is active transport, and that one requires energy. I think you have understood. Let's go quickly to what are the importances of active transport. What are the importance of active transport? Active transport plays very many importances. We can have most of the importances that we can mention. There are very many importances of active transport. Let's try to see what are those importances of active transport. Active transport. One of the importance of active transport, the absorption of mineral ions in root hair cells. Root hair cells absorbs mineral ions. Take an example like magnesium ions. Take an example like calcium ions. Normally, most of the time, are normally done by active transport. Let's have the importances and significances of active transport. Significances of active transport. Importances of active transport. There are a number of importances that are played by active transport. I said one is the absorption of mineral salts in the root hair cells. These are the importance. Number one, you can say that is through active transport. Through active transport, root hair cells in plants absorbs mineral salts and ions in the surrounding soil. Number two, the absorption, the cell lining, the cells lining in the ileum, in the human small intestine, human small intestines, continues to absorb food molecules by active transport, All right? Number three, we can also have another function of this, the transmission of the nerve impulses. That is supposed to be the exchange of potassium ions and sodium ions along the cell membrane is also done by active transport, where when you find the sodium ions are more inside compared to the outside, they have to be taken from outside by active transport by the help of ATP. Exchange of potassium and sodium ion, what you call action potential, during the nerve cells. Exchange of sodium and potassium ion are normally done by active transport. Let's have another function of active transport. You can shift that. Let's have another function of active transport. Another function of active transport, nerve cells need sodium ions. 3 nerve cells need sodium ions and potassium ions to function. So these nerve cells, they need both these sodium, if I can write, this is sodium ions, and we can have and potassium ions. For them, the nerve cells need them for acceleration of the nerve impulses. So exchange of the exchange of potassium and sodium ions, these one are normally aided by active transport. The last one is when urine is first formed. That is number 4. When urine is first formed in the kidneys. It contains useful substances. Substances like, what are those useful substances, students? We talk about some of the useful substances. We can talk about glucose. Can talk about even glucose in addition to waste products. Has to be absorbed, reabsorbed by active transport. So it means that these are the number of importances. Let's go through these importances. I said number 1, active transport is very important for the root hair cells in plants to absorb mineral salts and in the surrounding soil. It means that what are those mineral salts I'm talking about? We can talk about an example like magnesium, which is very important in the process of photosynthesis. We have the cell lining in the human small intestines, or continues to absorb food molecules by active transport. Some of the food molecules can just be absorbed in the small intestines by the help of active transport. I said number 3, I said nerve cells need sodium ions and potassium ions to function. If there are absence of these potassium and sodium ions, the nerve cell will not perform their functions efficiently. So they have to be carried from outside to inside by the help of active transport. The last one, which is number 4, I said when urine is formed in the kidney, automatically urine is going to be formed with some of the useful substances. Those useful substances, we can talk about glucose, and should not get lost through the urine. It has to be reabsorbed. And how does the reabsorption of that useful substances, take an example, a glucose, is reabsorbed? It is normally done by active transport. So you can also look for other functions of active transport. This is not the only functions. Look for other functions. Let me talk about the differences between a passive process and active process. How does the active process differ from a passive process? As I mentioned it earlier, I mentioned that passive process does not need something to move the substances. Substances are moved freely. They don't need energy to carry them. But for the case of active transport, molecules has to move by the aid of energy. And I said that form of energy that is used to transport molecules is referred to as ATP. And student, I remind you that ATP is adenosine triphosphate. When you get a diphosphate plus another phosphate group, you get a triphosphate. And that is most of the energy that is stored in mitochondria where cellular respiration takes place. Let's talk about the differences. Here are the differences. We can say, number 1, transport occurs from higher concentration higher concentration of molecules and ions to a lower concentration in order to maintain the equilibrium in cells. Here I can say molecules, they move from higher concentration to a lower concentration, down the concentration gradient. I will like that word, down the concentration gradient, all right? From higher to lower concentration. But here the transport of molecules occurs from lower concentration of solute to a higher concentration of solute. As I gave you an example, how the molecules are moving from a lower concentration to a higher concentration. I told you, take an example, inside we have some molecules that are inside here. They are very many compared to these ones that are outside. They have to move, these carrier proteins have to be carried from a low concentration to a higher concentration. That one is aided by energy, which is in the form of ATP. Does not require, this passive process, I said, does not require cellular energy. Doesn't require cellular energy. But this one requires cellular energy. And that cellular energy, we can rate it again in form of ATP cellular energy in form of ATP. Number 3, it involves osmosis and diffusion. I said it involves the process of osmosis and diffusion. But here, the process of active transport, most of the time it transports large molecules, macromolecules. So it involves endocytosis and exocytosis. Endo means taking substance from inside to outside. Then exo, it is taking substance from outside to inside. That's supposed to be endo, taking substance from outside to inside. Then exo, taking substances from inside to outside. Take an example, we can have some waste products in our body. It needs to be eliminated from our body. It is done by means of exocytosis. We can just be having some useful substances that are found outside the body and need to be taken inside. And that one is done by means of endocytosis, all right? So the active transport involves endocytosis and exocytosis. Lastly, which is number 4, the last difference between active transport and passive transport. The passive transport transports any soluble water, oxygen, and even carbon dioxide. I can write here, it transports small molecules. Small molecules. It transports small molecules. But this one transports large molecules, complex sugars. Complex sugars are normally transported by active transport because they need energy to transport them. Transports proteins, ions, and large cells, and complex sugars are normally done by active transport. So quickly, let's go and make, we reviewed it several times. I mentioned it, we can go back through again it, and we mentioned the differences. A passive process, that one moves the molecules from higher concentration to lower concentration down the concentration gradient. Down the concentration gradient. Here, transport occurs from lower concentration to higher concentration against the concentration gradient. Simply, I can talk about it is uphill transport. When moving from down the hill to the top of the hill. What do? You normally use energy. So it normally uses energy in form of ATP. Said number 2, does not require cellular energy. The molecules don't require cellular energy. They move freely. They don't need energy to transport them. They are able to move, all right? And here I said they require cellular energy. It involves osmosis and diffusion process. This one involves endocytosis and exocytosis. If I say endocytosis, I said taking substance from outside to inside. Take an example, you know how amoeba feeds. It normally does by means of engulfing, taking substance from outside to inside. And then exocytosis, I said, some of the body needs to remove waste products from the body. It is done by exocytosis. Removing substance from inside to outside is exocytosis. The last thing I said, it transports any soluble water. Water can transport water, it can transport oxygen, and even carbon dioxide. How do you normally take oxygen in our body? It is by means of diffusion. How do you normally take the movement of water in our body is normally done, absorption of water in the root hair cell is done by means of diffusion and osmosis. Carbon dioxide is also the same. In the lungs is normally taken by means of diffusion and osmosis. But this one transports proteins, ions, and large molecules. So let's have some home assignment. And the home assignment, this is the home assignment. Number 1 is what do you understand? What do you understand by active transport? Active transport. Number 2, that is A. Then B, give at least 4 differences between passive process, passive transport, and active transport. Number 2, there are 2 numbers. Give 4 significances of active transport in living organisms. So that is the end of the exercise. And students, thank you very much for being with me in my lesson. Hope to see you next time, and keep in touch. Good.